Try hitting on some girls. Impossible for a middle school graduate, huh? It was James, a middle school classmate, who said this to me. James always looked down on me for being a middle school graduate, and he never missed an opportunity to harass me like this. Until today, I couldn't talk back to James, but today is different. In front of everyone, I made up my mind and said to James, "She's actually my secretary and my wife." I'll never forget that the murmurs of the people around us and James's expression at that moment. My name is Michael. I'm turning 36 this year. I married Sarah 6 years ago, and today was our wedding anniversary. I met her at work. She's kind, independent, and yet stunningly beautiful enough to turn heads. I often think she's too good for me. When I get home, there's always a warm meal waiting for me, and the house is spotless, down to every corner. I have such a perfect family life and a fulfilling job in logistics. Though the early days were tough, I've come a long way. I lost my father when I was in the 7th grade of middle school, and then my mother collapsed from overwork. There wasn't much I could do back then, but by working right after graduating from middle school, I managed to support my mother somehow. I had a dream university I wanted to attend, but my situation made it impossible. The thought of working right after middle school was unimaginable, and despite being discouraged by everyone around me, my determination to support my mother got me through it. At first, I resented my circumstances, but now, my struggles makes me appreciate the ordinary things in life. Having food to eat every day and having loved ones by my side are my greatest happiness. That's the most important thing to me. Yet, in our society, not everyone feels this way. There are people who can't see the happiness in front of them and try to find their own happiness by looking down on others. A typical example was James, my middle school classmate. James was essentially considered a leader of our class, fearless during our middle school days. Not only by classmates but also by seniors, he was held in high regard. However, this recognition seemed to get to his head, turning him into a rather unpleasant person over time. He would loudly mock anyone who made a mistake and would barrage those who displeased him with verbal abuse, subjecting them to various forms of harassment. Luckily, I was a rather inconspicuous student, so I managed to avoid becoming a target of his harassment and lived peacefully throughout my 3 years of middle school. However, everything changed after graduation. Since I started working right after middle school and didn't have much free time to hang out with my classmates, I really wanted to attend the reunion. It was the only chance I had to interact with people of my age, and I wanted to catch up with my friends. 24 years after graduating from middle school, the reunion was organized. It was meant to be a gathering of my 8th grade class. Because I was in the same class as James for 3 years, he was also expected to attend. I naively thought that most of us are college students or working adults by now, so James would have matured too. On the day of the reunion, I arrived at the venue earlier than everyone else. While waiting for the others, I saw a man waving from a distance as he approached. "Hey, long time no see." The one waving was James. Since our middle school days, James had grown significantly taller. He has a slender body like a model. He was also wearing a suit, and he looked very intelligent. "Wow, it's been a while. How have you been?" Of course, it seems like I'm the first one here. Although we weren't close in middle school, the reunion sparked conversations about the old days. Despite my previous feelings, talking to James as an adult made me reconsider maybe he wasn't such a bad guy after all. As we chatted, more and more classmates began to arrive. As we entered the restaurant reserved by the organizer, everyone started drinking at the signal for a toast. The reunion took place in a fairly spacious place with private rooms, allowing everyone to stand up and chat with various people. I was also catching up with classmates I hadn't seen in a while, but gradually the atmosphere turned to reminiscing about old time. "By the way, Michael, What were you doing after graduating from middle school? Oh, I started working right after graduation. So, you're a middle school graduate. Actually, this wasn't the first reunion for our 8th grade class, but it was my first time attending. Therefore, almost no one knew what I had been up to since graduating from middle school. And the moment I mentioned I was a middle school graduate, James looked at me with a smirk. Being a middle school graduate is pretty bad, isn't it? We live in an era where educational background is highly valued. In contrast, I went to college and now work as a lawyer. James said it while showing off the badge pinned to his suit. I had heard rumors. James had gone straight to a prestigious university and become a lawyer. Lawyers can easily get women, you know. When I go to a group dating, I'm unstoppable. I'm thinking maybe I could take someone home tonight if there's a chance. Even though we've had a few drinks, this isn't the kind of thing you talk about loudly. Yet, James seems not to care about those around him at all, speaking loudly enough for others to hear. I see. That was all I could respond with. What's with that response? With that attitude, you won't be popular. I mean, being a middle school graduate, you can't be popular anyway. Whether I'm popular or not is beside the point. I'm married, actually. Then I showed off the ring on my left ring finger. Seriously, you can get married even as a middle school graduate. What kind of person did you marry? Someone much older than you, like your parents? James seemed displeased that I was married and started prying into details about my partner. However, since I don't really enjoy talking about my wife, I was just tuning out James's questions when he started saying this. You're not really married, are you? I'm married. I'm wearing the ring, aren't I? Maybe you're just wearing it for show. He seemed determined to believe I couldn't possibly be popular. I didn't mind him thinking that, but honestly, I wished he would stop bothering me. James seemed to want to talk about himself, not letting others get a word in, and gradually, our classmates moved to other seats, away from him. Being a lawyer is tough, you know. Every day I'm swamped with paperwork and defending clients. I hadn't handled a big case yet, but I'm sure my time will come. He boasted about his achievements and efforts. All he talked about were his own achievements and efforts, nothing but what could only be seen as bragging. By this point, the reunion was winding down, and everyone seemed to be pleasantly buzzed. James was probably drunker than anyone else in the room, as he had had plenty of beer and wine. He seemed bored with talking to me and moved on to our other classmates, who appeared quite annoyed by him. As the reunion came to an end, and we were all too tipsy to notice much, we left the restaurant. I followed my classmates out of the restaurant, and there was a car parked in front of the store. It was a large car, the kind that's referred to as a luxury vehicle, and it was drawing the attention of all my classmates. Wow, that car is amazing. Definitely a luxury car. What kind of job do you need to have to drive something like that? Then, the car door opened and a woman stepped out. The woman had slender legs peeking out from her skirt and long hair that flowed down to her waist, fluttering in the wind. The moment she stepped out of the car and took off her sunglasses, she revealed striking eyes that commanded the attention of everyone present. A truly beautiful woman. Whoa, that beautiful lady. I've never seen someone so gorgeous before. While my classmates were buzzing, the woman looked straight at me. Wait, is she looking at me? Could she have fallen for me? I doubt that, I replied. Don't be a buzzkill, and you, try hitting on her. Impossible for a middle school graduate, huh? It seems the word middle school graduate has become material for James to mock me with, and I've lost count of how many times he's said it just today. James is looking at me with a smug expression, nudging me in the ribs with his elbow. This reunion alone had given me more than enough unpleasant feelings. Moreover, due to him not having any cash on hand, I somehow ended up covering James's expenses. The alcohol made me bold, and I found myself saying something unexpected. She's my secretary and wife, you know." The moment I spoke, James's eyes widened in disbelief, looking at me as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What are you talking about? That joke isn't funny at all. There's no way someone like you could have any connection with such a beautiful woman. If you think it's a lie, you can ask her yourself." "Humph. Instead of that, I'll go and hit on her. Just watch, I'll definitely succeed." Ignoring my words completely, James walked towards the woman. He should have stopped, but why is he so confident in himself? Thinking James was foolish, I decided to watch how things would unfold. "Hey, gorgeous, what are you doing here all by yourself? What's your name? Are you talking to me? There's no one else as beautiful as you here. You were looking at me the whole time, weren't you? Perhaps it was love at first sight. Indeed, beautiful women know how to choose." The woman, with a troubled expression, conversed with James. "I wasn't looking at you, I was looking at my husband." "Husband? You mean you came to pick him up from the reunion?" "Yes, that's right." It seemed James was becoming a nuisance, and the woman's responses gradually became more curt. Feeling sorry for her, I decided to intervene. "Sarah, thanks for picking me up." James turned around to look at me, then back at the woman, his confusion evident. "What do you mean, Sarah? Explain this." "Like I said earlier, she's my secretary and wife." "Your wife, and she's also your secretary?" James's face said he couldn't understand, which wasn't surprising. I had told him about being a middle school graduate, but not about my current job. "I work in logistics, but a few years ago, I started my own company." That was before marrying Sarah, so it's been almost a decade. At that time, I was only 26, when most people were just getting accustomed to their jobs. However, I had been working earlier than anyone else and wanted to achieve something bigger. Using the knowledge and connections I had accumulated, along with my savings, I launched a shipping company. It was challenging at the start, and I couldn't afford to hire other employees, but I managed to keep it going, and now we're successful enough to employ staff. Sarah was hired as a secretary, but as we spent more time together, our relationship deepened, leading to marriage. That's why she continues to work as my secretary, even after our marriage. I explained this to James, but he seemed unable to believe it. He couldn't imagine that the guy he mocked for being a middle school graduate owned his own company. And he must not be able to imagine that the beautiful woman that everyone looks back at was my wife. "Come on, if you knew I was in trouble, you should have come to my rescue sooner." Sorry, I just wanted to tease a bit. Shall we go now?" With that, Sarah and I got into the car. While James and the classmates looked on in astonishment, I waved goodbye. On the way home, I told Sarah about everything that happened at the reunion, and it seems she already dislikes James. "What's with that guy? Behaving too close and familiar for someone I just met. Was he always like that?" "Yeah, he hasn't changed much from back then." "Well, I'm glad you're not friends with someone like that." Sarah doesn't like people who are too close or overly familiar, like James. Feeling guilty for not helping her sooner, I bought her favorite cake on the way home. When we got home, I was bombarded with messages from classmates asking about what happened, keeping me busy with replies. James also sent a message demanding an explanation, but I had nothing more to say and preferred not to talk to him, so I ignored it. And so, the busy days continue. Rather than saying the reunion was fun, I was a bit worn out from James's constant snide remarks. However, if there's another reunion, I'm sure I'd attend. But with work being so busy, I almost started to forget about the reunion altogether. A year had passed since the reunion, and finally, I could take a breather, leading to discussions about going on a trip with Sarah. Since founding the company, taking a long break had been impossible, likely leaving Sarah feeling lonely. The company had grown to the point where it could operate without me, employing about 20 staff members. It's been a while since we've gone on a trip. I'm so excited. There are so many places I want to go. It's hard to choose. Since we took about a week off, we could go anywhere, which made choosing a destination difficult due to the abundance of options. Eventually, we decided on Mexico, as per Sarah's request. We carefully selected the places we wanted to visit and decided to prepare thoroughly. Since both Sarah and I tend to forget things easily, neglecting to prepare in advance would lead to trouble later. Today, while checking for any forgotten items, I realized I didn't have a case for my contact lenses. Though cases can be bought at stores at the destination, a non-disposable case seemed more practical for a long stay, prompting me to rush to a nearby store. That store has everything, and I thought of buying a sleep mask for the plane ride. As I was thinking about this, I quickly arrived at the store. Upon entering, I found it bustling with people and shelves lined with a wide variety of products. Overwhelmed by the selection, I couldn't find what I was looking for and decided to ask an employee, searching the store. After much effort, I finally found an employee and called out to them, only to be shocked when I saw the person's face. Because it was James. I can't seem to find what I'm looking for. Could you help me, please? Sure, what are you looking for? James turned around, surprised upon hearing my voice. James, is that you? Well, you see. Realizing it was me, James looked around nervously, blinking repeatedly. He was supposed to be a lawyer. Why was he here? I forgot what I came to buy, pondering this. James seemed to be thinking hard about something, scratching his head and trying to say something to me. To break the awkward silence, I asked, "Weren't you supposed to be a lawyer?" No, I was asked to help out by an acquaintance. See how busy it is. They were short on staff and really needed the help. According to James, he was only working there temporarily and not officially employed. I wondered if it was okay for a lawyer to have a side job, but decided to keep my doubts to myself. I see, that stuff. I never thought you'd be the type to help out like this. Haha. Despite claiming to be helping due to staff shortages, James seemed to be hiding something. I couldn't help but wonder if the lawyer's story was a lie and he actually worked here. Regardless, I was here to shop, so I told James what I wanted and asked him to show me where to find it. I'm looking for a contact lens case and a sleep mask. Where can I find them? Oh, over here. James seemed to have a softer demeanor than usual, perhaps because other customers were around. Well, that's probably the norm in such settings. He led me through the store, and I was able to find what I needed. Thanks, I couldn't have found it without you. By the way, it's impressive how you know where everything is, even though you're only helping out temporarily. Well, it's not my first time here. I've been here a few times before. Although I couldn't imagine James volunteering for anything, it reminded me that everyone has sides to them that others may not see. I needed to head home soon, so I started walking towards the checkout with the items in my hand. Just then, another employee approached from behind James and placed a hand on his shoulder. James, can you help me with this? The aisle is too narrow to display this item. The moment he was tapped on the shoulder and addressed, James's artificially crafted smile froze. Then, he turned around slowly, like a robot. James, is everything okay? Do you know this person? I'm sorry for interrupting. I'll ask you again later. Before James could respond, the employee hurried away. Caught in an awkward silence, we both stood frozen on the spot. Please don't tell anyone that I'm the store manager here, James said, shoulders slumped and eyes fixed on the floor. I want to hear the whole story, so contact me after work. Okay. After saying that, I purchased the items and went home. A few hours later, James contacted me to say he was off work, so I headed back to the store. How about we go to a cafe nearby? I suggested to James, who was waiting, and we entered a cafe in the same building. Curious about many things, I first asked why James, supposedly a lawyer, was working as a store manager. "Why are you working there?" James, reluctantly at first, took his time to explain. After graduating from middle school, James dedicated himself to his studies from high school onward with the goal of becoming a lawyer. While others were playing, he was studying, and it seems he hardly took any time off to play even during school holidays. As he isolated himself in his studies, friends stopped inviting him out, and he became somewhat of an outsider. Despite this, James's resolve to become a lawyer was unwavering. Even in university, where he prioritized his studies while juggling part-time jobs to afford tuition, he often fell ill or attended lectures sleep-deprived, hindering his academic performance. He struggled with the preliminary exams necessary for the bar exam, failing multiple times without ever passing. Eventually, he gave up on becoming a lawyer. "Why did you want to become a lawyer so badly?" I asked, intrigued by his persistent effort. "It's because my father was wrongfully arrested." "What do you mean?" James shared that during his high school years, his father was wrongfully arrested. The lawyer they hired didn't do his job properly, leading to a guilty verdict. Though the actual time served was about 3 years, having a criminal record proved to be a significant hardship. His father lost his job and struggled to find new employment. Witnessing this, James was determined to become a lawyer to save others from wrongful convictions. Despite his efforts, he couldn't become a lawyer and ended up in his current situation after job hunting. There was no need to lie about being a lawyer, right? I had already told everyone. I can admit I hadn't made it. I knew it was wrong, but I ended up deceiving everyone. James said, sipping the hot coffee that the server had brought him. I drank mighty, unsure of what to say. The James I knew was someone who used harassment and snide remarks, even looking down on me for being a middle school graduate at the reunion. "I understand how tough it's been for you, but why did you harass me?" I wanted to believe I was still better than someone. If there was someone below me, it was reassuring. "I'm truly sorry for that day. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I regret it." James apologized sincerely, leaning on the table in front of him. Owning a company, I believed I had a talent for seeing people's true nature. Yet, seeing James apologize deeply made me question that confidence. I might have been overconfident in myself. "Stop apologizing. I'm not bothered by it anymore. Just live without lying from now on." "I will." We talked a bit more and parted ways after about an hour. Later on, James shared his true situation with our classmates. They were shocked and confused by the deception but appreciated his honesty. Some who had disliked James now wanted to get closer, understanding his circumstances. Just when it seemed things were settling down, James faced the worst situation. He was laid off. The company, not just the store, had been struggling for a while, leading to the closure of all its outlets. Caught off guard, James hadn't been job hunting and was now unemployed, with a pregnant wife to support. Unable to stand by, I decided to call James out for a talk. "Hey, what are you planning to do from now on? You're going to have a child, right? You need to find a job quickly, don't you?" "I know that better than anyone, but no one will hire me. I have no idea what's wrong. I just can't do it anymore." James, once the center of attention, now couldn't lift his gaze, shoulders slumped in defeat. I decided to make him a proposal. "How about you try taking the bar exam again?" "Don't be ridiculous. It's impossible now. It costs money to take the exam, and I've forgotten everything I studied. I'll support you until you get your qualification. How about that?" Even I wasn't sure what I was saying, and I imagine James found it even more incomprehensible. Up to now, I had been focused solely on myself, never really helping anyone else. However, after learning about James's situation in detail, I felt I had discovered something I was lacking. At 26, I had started my own company and became somewhat arrogant as I began employing staff, but there were times when contracts fell through or we struggled to secure a project. I tried to find a cause but could never pinpoint it, leaving me frustrated. Sarah probably knew the reason, but I wanted to realize it on my own and thus didn't seek her advice. From James's situation, I learned I was lacking kindness. Focused primarily on profits, I had forgotten to be considerate of others, resulting in unstable business relations and unsuccessful endeavors. I realized something thanks to you. You can do more, James. With a chance right in front of you, is it okay to give up here? After pondering for a while with his head in his hands, James finally muttered softly, "All right, I'll give it another try." From then on, James dedicated himself to studying for the bar exam. I provided the necessary funds for the qualification and minimal living expenses. Friends asked me the reason I went to such lengths. Indeed, we weren't particularly close. In fact, I think I disliked James. From an outsider's perspective, it was hard to understand why I would help him to such an extent. Certainly, realizing something important for James played a part. But there was another reason. My parents had also been falsely accused once. I had never told anyone, but my father worked as an accountant. During his tenure, an embezzlement case occurred. My father, responsible for money management, was the first to be suspected and spent some time away from home. I was only a primary school student but understood that we were caught in a serious situation. The stress from that time caused my father to collapse, and he never returned home. Seeing my past in James, I couldn't help wanting to assist him. My father was irreplaceable to me. Despite being busy, he found time to play with me, and we never struggled financially until his passing. So, I understood James's situation well, struggling financially because his father couldn't find a job after being unable to re-employ. Eventually, James passed the preliminary examination with great effort, and he smoothly cleared the bar exam as well. On the day the bar exam results were announced, James was the first to contact me. "Hello, is this Michael? I did it, I finally passed. It's all thanks to you." "That's great, really great." Despite being adults, we both ended up crying over the phone. I remember going to a bar afterward and drinking a lot. I'm not much of a drinker, but I drank too much in my joy. Being unable to go home on my own, Sarah reluctantly came to pick me up by car, a bit resistant since I was drinking with James. But I thought her opinion of James would change once she met him now. I'm truly sorry for that time. I've been nothing but helped by Michael. I'll work hard to repay the favor, so please continue to take good care of Michael. Despite being drunk, James smoothly said these words in front of Sarah. I was a bit embarrassed but couldn't hide my happiness at his words. Sarah, trying to hide her embarrassment with a laugh, glanced at me and then spoke to James. "Of course, leave it to me." On the way home, Sarah mentioned that her impression of James had changed. Some time later, James offered to return the favor. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he insisted on doing something. "What do you plan on doing as returning a favor? Aren't you currently in trouble because you don't have a lawyer?" I heard from Sarah. When did she? In fact, there was an issue with lost cargo that needed to be transported, and we were in the midst of figuring out who was responsible. The loss occurred after delivery, but given the high value of the products, the other party wanted us to pay damages. However, without concrete evidence, the lawyers said there was little they could do, leaving us in a difficult situation. James asked to see the information we had stored on paper and computers, so I decided to hand over everything we had. After looking through everything, there's no problem at all, Michael. You haven't done anything wrong, so stand firm. True to his word, James proved our innocence and saved the company from a crisis. Thank you so much. It would have been tough if we had to pay compensation. It was tens of millions of dollars. Well, can I consider my debt repaid with this? Of course, if anything, you've done too much. Afterward, James became the dedicated lawyer for my company. He had just landed a job at a law firm after getting his license, but when I approached him, he immediately agreed to join us. Though we're still getting used to working together, I'm very happy to be working with James. There's still so much to learn, but I hope to grow with the help of those around me.